got a gold medal for.
Oh, right. Yeah, right, we'll see you in a moment. So here we are at the most important garden of all, my humble opinion. We've got the young designer Rehearsal Garden for the Shooting Stars Children's Hospice. So I'm very proud to say we got a silver medal. Now there's one thing that we're obviously going to promote as well. It's probably too late by the time the video goes out, but it's for the people's choice. So we're hoping that we can get enough people voting that will give us the highly coveted People's Choice Award, which, in my opinion, is the real award that counts because it's the one that people like the best. So we're hoping we've won it twice. So hoping for a lucky triple. So let's take you into the garden. We'll give you a bit of a sort of tour. Yeah, we've got all the front wall, which is quite a brave choice.
Yeah, I think you can definitely see a Scandinavian influence here.
Yeah, definitely. It's got the timber.
I've had listening to people's remarks walking past.
All right, okay. Is that what they're thinking?
No, they're thinking Alcatraz.
Yeah.
Cell blockage.
I won't tell Emily that.
That's true. I'm not lying you up.
Oh, seriously? Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's actually meant to be a modern take on the brutalist influences and style, which was a very sort of heavy concrete. It was a short-lived style, I think, sort of late 40s, early 50s, through to I think it was late 70s, possibly early 80s. Sort of structures that I seem to remember. There was Wrexham Police Station and Chester Police Station. A lot of the architecture on Chester.
Told you cells.
Okay.
Told you cells.
Souls?
Cells.
Oh, I was thinking you were talking about souls.
Cells. Stations.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, they've knocked both of these down. So yeah, a bit of a short-lived thing, but I mean, it's a modern take, and we've had to do some quite significant structural stuff. You'll notice the triple wall, because Emily wanted the block work done in this sort of grid fashion. So there was no structural strength in that. So we had to build it out of triple skin, and then use ties both vertically to put it all together. So we'll take you inside the garden and give you a bit of a tour. So here we are inside the Rehearsal Garden, which is designed by Emilia Balzager and constructed by Ashford Landscape Community, probably the finest northwest leading landscaper, subject to obviously certain other landscape companies that are available. So we've got a number of significant features with this. Actually, as I sort of pan around, you'll see the most striking feature is this water feature. And this was actually a very last-minute.com. We had that supposedly going to be supplied by somebody else who unfortunately let us down last minute. So over a Krispy Kreme donut.
So you normally that yourself?
Oh, by hand. Yeah, obviously. Yeah. Throw it on my shoulder. All 1,200 kilograms of it. And yeah,
it's not just a drainage.
It's significantly more than a drainage pipe. Significantly more. But yeah, we had to crane that in 1,200 kilograms after making it into a well-designed, crafted water feature. So we've then got resin windows, which were made by a lovely lady, who's also known as Laser Lady, and she very kindly did those windows for us. And fortunately, they haven't been melted in this heat, because I've got to say, conditions. I mean, poor old piece is evaporating as we speak.
And when you consider what the conditions were like when you actually built this, teeming down with rain, like a quagmire, wasn't it?
Oh, it's just nuts. And the BBC chose the wettest day of the build to come and do the filming and the interviews. So, yeah, fortunately, we had about 5 different gazebos all rigged up. So, I think we were the most popular garden. So we had the most shelter. So, I'll tell you the one thing I have noticed, and it's quite fortuitous. I've noticed that obviously you're sporting the finest 40-mode concrete game. It's great to see. Your
Lovely.
yeah,
It's just you in anyway.
yes. It's a, do you know who I am? But some of the some of the older 21 clubs I know are sticklers for tradition. And I notice you're not wearing a chain, but that's not a problem because you're taking a much more modern approach. But it just so happens, in quite fortuitously, if we make our way around the garden, the Area 36 chain of office has actually got its own Facebook page, if you'd like to click on the link. But it's been very kindly on tour and has it's made a visit to us. So there we are. Awesome. What a coincidence. Good to see you sporting a chain, Peter, even if it is just the Area 30, not just the Area 30. No, I wouldn't. I think that one will suffice. So, so we'll tell you a little bit more once we've rehydrated.
Hi. Well, whilst wandering around, whilst hanging around for Rory to turn up, I met this young man, a tabler from my area, Monique, who's got gold for exhibiting the aces here.
Let's focus in on the gold, because that's the most important medal. Most important medal. Beautiful display as well. So Dave, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Dave Fisher from Elite 136. Just there working with large-scale trees to exhibit kind of maples and stuff. Especially the bonsai for the garden tree.
Well, that's where the confusion lay, because Tom Atkins, I've got to say, very carefully and cunningly sent us both a link. And then I didn't mention anything about maples. Let's spin around a little bit, gentlemen, so we can actually see the trees in the background as well. Not just we're as handsome and beautiful as we all are, obviously. Yeah. And we're just sharing the treasure. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about what's the link. The large-scale trees you were saying traditionally have exhibited here.
Yeah, so lots of
you were saying traditionally have exhibited here.
Yeah, so lots of trees have exhibited with the RHS for yeah, Catholic will watch the trees down tired for doing shows for next year. COVID period, they had some previously RHS.
Right.
But now my nursery is open to the public, so we start selling their trees to our nursery to do the RHS show this year.
And what's the name of your nursery again?
My extension here.
Plug. Buy your essential trees, bonsai and maples, obviously, and send nursery.
And then landscaping.
Oh yeah, I've heard about them. Yeah, but the Northwest leading landscapes, obviously, the actual landscapes to be contacted. Yeah, it's been great. But inside here, I'll tell you what, it's hotter inside here. It's been a hot day. I think we're all about half a stone lighter. Yeah, but really, I mean, there's the show itself, and what's been your impression of the first day?
It's been a good day. This morning, so I can see the flag this afternoon.
What you want is to be on town.
I think it's tempting. It'll be the busiest Sunday we have.
I remember going to a show at the NEC, it was the Glee Exhibition Garden. There were some Swedish boys there, and they were like flat pack furniture, something along those kind of lines. But I noticed that they were doing a lot of singing, so I kind of wandered over to see what the fuss was about. They had their own barrels sneaked into the display stand, and for certain VIP important people, I must say the standard dropped as the day went on. They were handing out beers, slowly sort of slaughtered throughout the day. So yeah, fantastic. So we'll cut it a little bit short here. Unless anything else you want to we'll move on to a few more stands. Yeah. So thanks, Dave. Great to see you. Cheers. So Peter and I are wandering up from the floral marquee. Seeing these lovely little small plots. It's literally been shut up. Felt like almost overnight, to be honest with you. It's lovely. It's complex gardens, mini gardens. There's so much going on. Such a small space here. Look, this is what's typical. Look at that seating area, fenced off area. Lovely, isn't it? Just poking on those through. Right around the limelight there. Beautiful. And then, of course, we've got all the contractors that come down and
So has the sound gone, Colin?
oh, yeah, well balanced. All right, where did you get those beers from?
I muted myself.
Oh, we're going the wrong way. Awesome, even better, we're going that way.
This was the hunt for beer, wasn't it?
Ladies and gentlemen, the show is now closed. Please now start making your way to the exit. Thank you for visiting the RHS Power Show shopping cart. We wish you a safe journey home.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, pleasure. Here we go, the start of RHS Tatton 2021. All the boys are here. We've got the young Padawan, George, giving us a dance already. Followed by Simon, Eden Landscapes, and we have Charlie Green from CG Maidens. So this is the plot. Looking forward to getting cracking. We've only had an hour in the queue trying to get passes sorted, but we're in, and yeah, hope it's going to stay dry for today. Forecast isn't looking good for the next couple of days, but as Billy Carly said, no such thing as bad weather, just the inappropriate clothing. So we'll get cracking, get started. Speak to you later. We've got Digger Day, bit of digger action. Electric digger, one over. We make it dance and sing. Just a little bit of German techno while it's moving. Sounds like Scaraspa.
This was Volvo's first electric digger they brought out and very kindly sponsored.
Standing back after the block requisition. Managed to hold 3 packs. That's the green block. Cement 3 blocks. So Martin Baines, fantastic. Get those sorted. I feel a little bit of a whoopsie there. Sorted it. Both of us managed to get a result. But the rest of what's coming, we've got ECR 25 Volvo. Charlie on concrete. We've got the 2 youngsters doing their thing as best they do. Youth exuberance. Well, boys, that's what I like to see. Man and machine, perfect harmony. So we've got the 600, 450, and the 300 safely on the ground near the garden. And then the advice that we were given was try and a distance. It's a lonely 600 pipe that we need to cut down. That's where it is. This is where we're up to. Using this new mortar, as I say, which is a bit like Play-Doh. It's a bit weird. It seems to be going up, but the curing time is a lot slower. Which shows up, we've had to do quite considerably thicker wall to accommodate the pattern. But all good. That's where hopefully the pipe's going to be going in the middle. So yeah, we're a long way off. It's progress has been made. Day 2, we've managed to get brickwork, blockwork, the courses up and down.
That was one of the better days.
Changeable weather.
Yeah, you don't normally see this side of everything, do you?
No, this is definitely the harsh reality of building a show garden. It all looks very, very pretty from the outside on show day, but this is the hard graft, the hard miles. Yeah, this was tough. This pipe, this was an addition, a last-minute addition, and we very kindly, Marshall's bailed us out last minute because we got let down by a sponsor literally 2 weeks before the show, and we needed to have a centre water feature, which originally was going to be a copper patinaed plug and play, but we got let down, so we had to think on our feet, and we managed to get this sewerage pipe, which we'd never tested before. And I've always said with show gardens, the golden rule is don't experiment with something you've never tried before. What did we do? Experimented.
It's just the test.
And this is the test. And poor old Charlie was in the firing line with that one. But the great thing was the mock-up worked, which was most important. So, Charlie got a bit wet, and we managed to get the water feature sorted. Brilliant. What we didn't realise was that each pipe weighed the best part of 1.5 tons, which had to be craned in. But it actually works fantastically well. Water features are notoriously difficult for either not working at all or being really temperamental. We had to get that in level and plumb, and we got it in almost first attempt, which meant that the water shimmered down all the sides in equal measure, which was unheard of. I really didn't think that was going to happen. So you can see the cheesy smiles of satisfaction. And it was based on this brutalist style. So being a concrete pipe, it fitted in beautifully with this tough brutalist, harsh, almost. It was kind of, the planting really was the juxtaposition to this concrete style, because it was harsh. As Peter said earlier on, it was kind of like Colditz or Cell Block H, which I took as a compliment, obviously. The Cornus Cusa tree there came in full bloom and looked beautiful when it first came. Unfortunately, the wet weather and the heat just nailed it, and all the flowers fell off. So we had to improvise a little. That was absolutely stunning. That tree was gorgeous. When it first arrived, it was incredible, but I just knew that it peaked a little bit too soon. But it was a beautiful structure. Being a multi-stemmed tree, it created this real kind of calming effect And again, juxtapositioned against this harsh concrete feel and this brutalist style, it really did kind of just help with the framing and the structure, that feeling of shade, and being multi-stemmed, it created a sense of delicateness.
We're at the end of day, what are we on now? Monday, Tuesday, Friday.
Yeah, excuse the sound quality. There's my son, George, giving us his best swans. I wasn't aware at all that he was in the background doing this. But as they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
I think this is the last video from you. It goes on to the sort of time lapse after this, just showing it getting built with a bit of music.
Yeah, that gives us a real sense. The time lapse is brilliant because it really gives us a sense of what was involved. Just a little bit of background for those that's.
Pause it just now if you want to give a bit of background.
Yeah, I mean if you want to play this without the sound, Colin, perhaps I'll.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I can do that.
Talk through some of the unique parts of the build. I mean, we were sponsored very kindly. Again, the sponsors were so generous. I mean, I managed to get in contact with a guy that helped me out on one of our previous show gardens, and he'd actually changed jobs and was working for Volvo. And he very kindly sponsored. They had a brand new electric digger, and he very kindly gave up his time to provide the machine. And it was their first outing of the electric digger, so they were keen, obviously, to promote it. The blocks were the first cement-free block that's ever been brought out. And again, that was a throwaway comment on a round table Santa Float WhatsApp group. I got a connection with a girl called Stephanie who worked for the company that produced the blocks, and cut a very long story short, they very kindly sponsored all these blocks on the basis of it. It was their first outing, which then led to another lead for the first cement-free mortar. And you'll notice the mortar is white. We had a bit of a fright. It turned green 3 days. It was on the R&D, the Research and Development Board, 2 weeks before the show. And we literally were the first guinea pigs. They'd never produced it before. So it was a bit of a heart in the mouth moment. But it worked, which was fantastic. Different properties. It cured, took a little bit longer to cure. And as I say, it turned green initially, but then went back to white, which was a relief, if nothing else. And they very kindly produced a special batch for us. The only problem was it was moisture sensitive, and the first week being biblical weather, it wasn't the ideal conditions. This is the planting going in, which just immediately softens everything up. And we got sponsored very kindly with the orange windows from a girl that did resin. She's called Resin Jazz, and she's actually was out of work. She did laser removal, and she's got into this as a bit of a hobby, and she's local to me. And so I got in contact, and she very kindly provided the windows, which I'm glad she produced 4, because we left one of them out in the full sun, and of course it melted and distorted into a boomerang. And then the Welsh larch, which is the timber that you see on the arches, again was a last-minute sponsor that bailed us out. And the bench was provided by another round tabler as well. So all in all, it was a real great team effort from a lot of round table and 41 club connections, business connections that all pulled together to really pull a rabbit out of the hat all last minute. And we were like the swans gliding across the lake, looking ever so elegant, but the frantic paddling underneath that had gone on to produce the garden was intense and very emotional. And the e-bike there was provided by, again, another tabler that had just started in business and was keen to help support us and obviously promote his bike as well. And we had a crow that visited us from the outset of the build that used that sewerage pipe as his own private bathtub and would appear on the hour every hour throughout the show and was the real centerpiece. And we got a massive audience with Kev the Crow bathing in our water feature. I think that was more interest with Kev the Crow than our garden at one point, which was fab. And the weather when we had the show was just the complete opposite to the build, of course, which was biblical wet weather, and then the show was the hottest recorded summer I think in a long time. We could see people visibly melting by 2 o'clock. You could see them collapsing in the shade of the trees and not moving for a few hours. All the planting was really muted. It was lush. It was a lot of textural and shade loving towards the back wall. We had openings through the hedge to be able to view, and then we had the viewing side with a low hedge. And also what we found was when people actually went into the arch, it felt quite separated until I was encouraging funneling people into the arch. As soon as they poked their head round into the arch, all of a sudden you got this massive calming effect, which again was that juxtaposition with the heavy concrete brutalist impact that was then just beautifully softened with all the textural and very muted white flowering. It was a very limited palette in terms of colour, and it was more sort of textural, which was what we were looking for. The Brunero Drac Frost there was one of my favourites. This beautiful glossy variegated leaf. The Cosinus cogrea, the Astral purpurea, was judged by the judges as being a little bit too big in its position. So unfortunately, Emily got marked down a little bit with the planting in that aspect. So which is where the silver medal kind of came from, because they did mark us down on a few things. The Cornus cusa not flowering was certainly one of them, and a couple of plants which they deemed as being too big in the wrong place. We got marked down on, but we still got a silver medal, which is I was very pleased with, and we got the coveted People's Choice Best in Show. And I'm really proud that that's our 3rd time of winning People's Choice Best in Show, and I don't know many landscapers that have got that. So yeah, I was really pleased with that, and the show was fantastic. It was a great feedback. Bit of a Marmite garden. There was some that didn't warm to it, which we kind of expected, but some that didn't warm to it immediately. Once I pushed them into the entrance, actually came away and went, "Oh, that's changed my mind completely." So it's interesting how that's initial view can be changed once you absorb the rest of the garden. So thanks, Colin. That's great. I'm sorry the sound was pretty poor. There was you didn't get the full
atmosphere. Yeah, it maybe did drag on a wee bit, maybe, didn't it, at the start? Just, I guess, probably to put it into a bit more context for everyone, the BBC did record something that we can probably play as well after watching that, which is a bit more professional than ours. Hopefully the sound works on this a lot better. If I haven't turned it completely off, I don't think I have. Hold on, I'll just check in case I've done it. If this affects it, that should be all right. So I think, can you see some flowers on your screen just now? So hopefully this will work.
Now for our penultimate young designer finalist, Emilia Balzager, a designer keen to demonstrate her love of the planet by using environmentally friendly materials in her build. Let's see how she got on.
My name's Emilia Balzager, and the garden I'm designing this year at Tatton is called the Rehearsal Garden in aid of Shooting Star Children's Hospice. The garden is designed for a family living in an urban environment. It's also based on brutalist architecture, which is something that I'm really inspired in general in my work. So you have these very hard enclosing walls to hide from the city world. And then the planting is really supposed to be like woodland greenery to create this wild feeling against the hard walls. I've tried to kind of address brutalist architecture in a more eco-friendly way. So I'm trying to use different materials that are in keeping with the style, but are more carbon neutral.
This is a green block, which is cement-free. So it's going to reduce the carbon footprint and CO2 emissions by up to sort of nearly 78%. This is the first time these blocks have been used. The mortar as well is literally in the research and development department and being tested a week before the show. So we are the guinea pigs for this.
This is the design for my garden. So when you come through the front entrance, there's a winding path around a centrally planted bed that's going to be gravel. So it creates some softness in the space. And then there's 3 concrete columns. 2 of them are going to be planted. We've got our lovely water feature installed here, which will be cascading water out over the top. And the cornice closes in, which is this nice multi-stem tree, which might not have its flowers on by the time the show opens, but I'm crossing my fingers. My plants have just turned up. I'm really excited. We've got some favourites that I use a lot, like this steeper tenuissima, which is a horsetail grass. And actually, because the garden is mainly whites and greens, I'm focusing a lot more on foliage. So we've got a whole bunch of different ferns up here. It's so nice to see all the different leaf shapes and textures up against this wall and see the contrast of the purple and the green tones kind of starting to mix with the grey tones of all of the hard landscaping. I think I've tried to take a bit of a risk with the style of garden I'm building. So I hope that people will be able to see that I'm trying to do something a little bit different and hopefully just be inspired by it and enjoy it.
Oh, sorry, it does show a little bit more of the garden here.
When you come onto Emilia's finished garden, what strikes me immediately is how peaceful it is. And I wasn't expecting that amongst all of this brutalist design. But I think that comes about from this curvaceous path, which takes you immediately as a journey through it. And obviously this really imposing water feature, but it's the sound. It's incredibly gentle and it's incredibly calming. Emilia is clearly inspired by brutalism, and the material of choice is concrete. But what she's done is recycled this drainage pipe as her main water feature. And then the blocks that you see are actually environmentally friendly because they are cement free. So it's given that illusion. And that's not going to be for everyone, this very kind of stark, in your face use of material. However, from a design perspective, simplicity of material is very strong, and that's what gives the impact. And I really love how she's done that, and only by bringing in a simple wooden piece here, which is this beautiful seat. Now, it's a real shame that this lovely cornucosa didn't have its flowers on, but you know what? It's a multi-stem, and they always hold their space in a garden. They're a real focal point, and I think it still really works. Now, the planting in here is a very tight palette. And again, that's kind of given that restrictiveness that you get within brutalism. And you have to do that through keeping the colours very simple. There's just the whites, the dark purples. There's even a little strawberry there with the flowers on, but the strawberries have come through. That's a really nice little detail. I think the planting is essential in a garden like this because you need to soften the walls. The walls are very, very stark. And by having the planting taken right up to the walls, it actually really softens the space. Seeing such a modernist, brutalist design at RHS Tatton isn't going to be for everyone. But I have to say, I really like that Emilia has been so brave and to show this expression of what she's really about. And we'll have to see whether it's going to help her to win the competition.
I think that was the end of that.
Thanks, Colin.
It's quite interesting seeing the build in the background
Yeah.
And then watching that at the end, you know, it gives you quite a big insight. Like you say, we just turn up and wander around these shows, and everything looks amazing.
Yeah, and do you know what's quite funny is actually standing at the back of the crowd that are walking around, and you know, everyone's a critic, aren't they? Oh, I don't like this, and I wouldn't have done it like that.
Yeah.
And you feel like slapping on the back of the head. So, do you know what I've been through?
Exactly, yeah.
But it's funny. I mean, I've done the RHS Town Flower Show now 4 times, and it's weird. I mean, the best way I can describe them is it's like having tattoos. You know, they're a horrible experience while you're doing them, but then you stand back and you look at, you know, especially if it's a good tattoo, obviously, you stand back, and as soon as you've gone through all that pain, you're standing back looking at them, and you go, I might do another. I would like to say it's like childbirth, but I'm sure I'll get shot down in flames for saying that.
So I have a question for you, Rory, then. So you spent clearly a lot of time and effort, as did the team, building a fairly substantial, brutalist construction. So what happens when the show is finished? What? This
is one of the hardest things that you have to go through. You get 14 days to build the show garden. You have a week of the show, well, 5 days of the show, and then the bell rings on the Sunday at 4 o'clock, and they have the sell-off, and it's a bun fight. Honestly, the first time it happened, it took me completely by shock and surprise, because fortunately, the first time I did it and the second time, I took a moment on the last day. I got there early in the morning and just took it all in and had a moment for myself. This year, we didn't get a chance to do it. So 4 o'clock rang, the bell rang, and it was just like we were ripping plants out, sticking them in pots, selling them off, because all the plants we sold off, and the money went to the Shooting Stars Children's Hospice that Emily had chosen as her chosen charity. So literally the garden got decimated within probably 20 minutes. It just got completely decimated. And we stopped, but once the show had ended at 6 o'clock, and we just looked around, and I've got a very poignant picture, because Emily had to actually go because she was in floods of tears. I mean, fortunately, I'm a little bit more hard-faced and battle-wearied and been through this before, so perhaps I didn't quite as emotional. But I've got a great picture of my steel toe cap boots and her steel toe cap boots in the entrance of this decimated soil everywhere. And then I was very blessed with the guy that's had sponsored the electric digger. He was actually doing a demonstration and a show of a brand new 13.5-ton digger. And he said, instead of bringing this electric one, he said, I've got this absolute animal of a machine with a pincher on it. It's got a wrist as well as the bucket, so he can turn it. He said, I can get that dropped off, and I'll have that done in no time. And these poor other designers, these young designers, were struggling with literally shovels and skips. I'd booked a couple of grab wagons. This guy made this machine whistle and sing. He was picking up little pieces of metal with the pinchers, and the next minute he's smashing concrete pipes together. He started at 9 o'clock. And there we are. He started at 9 o'clock, and by 2 o'clock we had cleared the site, smashed it all to pieces, grabs away, and we're sat there having a coffee and a brew and just admiring the desolate landscape. And then I turned to some of the other young designers who were looking very, very battered and battle weary, and they were still there 3 days later, still trying to varnish the garden. But it's a deer park, so it has to be turned back to a deer park. And what happens is, a week after we've finished, they have a clerk of works, Darren, who then has a stockpile of soil. They reinstate the levels and let nature take its course. And within 3 weeks, you'd never know we'd been there. It is incredible. we create this kind of, it's like a fairyland for a month, and then all of a sudden it just disappears again until next year. And that's part of the magic. It's a bit like the Santa float. It's the best way of describing it. You know, it's the magic of the moment, you know, that sort of brief moment of beautiful joy and exquisiteness, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's gone. So, yeah, it's a tough one. The first time you go through it, it's a tough one when you see it demolished. It was a great question, though. Any other questions from anybody?
How many people come to the show? And it's obviously quite a big show over 5 days. What's the attendance over that? How many do you get coming through the gates?
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure, but it must be getting on for 50, 60,000, I would imagine, because I mean it's open for 5 days. What's lovely is that because it's a deer park, the setting. I mean, I don't know if anyone else has been to any of the RHS shows, but Chelsea, whilst it's a fantastic show and there's huge sums of money thrown at it, it feels very intense, and you don't really get that connection with the designers, with the contractors. It's kind of, you know, it's normally about 5 or 6 deep throughout the day. With Tatton, it's like a country fair, so there's a very relaxed atmosphere. The northern friendliness comes through, and because there's a steady stream of people, we get to engage, and that's part of the joy for me, is actually engaging with the public and listening to their interpretation, what they see, them asking the questions. It's great to engage, and I actually learn an awful lot as well. I had some great conversations with some visitors that were part of the CO2 carbon neutral position that we are aiming to be towards by 2030 or 2050, I think it is. So that all new house builds are all building is carbon neutral. It was my birthday during the build, and my wedding anniversary, which I'm constantly reminded of. So that was a great picture at the end of a very hard day on my birthday. And yeah, we did celebrate, and unfortunately for Emily, she ran out of wine, and the only drink left was my fine single malt, which she decimated by pouring orange juice into. Shocking behaviour. It was a bottle of the finest Penderyn, I've got to say, single malt Welsh whiskey, which she then ruined by pouring orange juice in. But she consumed a fair amount of it, and then was completely broken the next day. And I think I've put her off whiskey for life. It was of course, it was the England v Norway match as well. So we were very blessed with. I'd got a relationship with a lovely lady who's the local vicar in Bollington, and she has an Airbnb, which is a beautiful 500-year-old farmhouse. So we were staying all together, and it was the England-Denmark match, which of course I'm very glad to say that we won. I think this was Emily about second whiskey in. I'd forgotten about that. That was a great one, Colin. I forgot what I'd sent you actually in terms of pictures.
and tell me this one more question, Laurie. So you're all in great form meeting people, but really behind the scenes, how much professional jealousy is there as you walk around and go, ooh, I wish I'd been involved in that one, or, you know, what really goes on behind the scenes of these lovely events? It's
funny, you know, actually, there's this, there is a great sense of camaraderie, I've got to say, because you're not really competing against each other. You're competing against yourself. So there's always going to be, and this is a great thing with perhaps being a bit of a seasoned show garden installer. As I mentioned to you guys before the meeting started, I've learned the hard way that there's a few golden rules you have to employ, which is don't experiment ideally with any new products. Be prepared, try and build everything off site, and make sure that you have double of everything, and that includes generators, hand tools, mixers, shovels, because the amount of times the young designers came up and said, oh, my still saw's broken, is there any chance I could borrow it? I've got a whacker, I haven't got this, the power's gone, our generator's broken. And it was great actually to be able to help these young guys and girls out with things that I'd learned the painful and hard way. This is the show director, and she's presenting us with the People's Choice Award, which is fantastic. They have two People's Choices Award, one for large garden and one for small garden. So whilst perhaps we were a little bit disappointed with a silver medal, I'd hoped to get perhaps a silver gilt. It was more than made up when we received this award, which is what the people thought was the best garden. So yeah, I was comforted by that. But to answer your question, there's a little bit of kind of, we all do it. There's a little bit of critique of, oh, I wouldn't have done it like that, and there are some gardens you think, oh yeah, I wish I'd been involved in that. That is something else. You know, there is some fantastic creativity, ingenuity. There's some great risk as well. The judges mark you for endeavour. They have several categories, which include obviously the build and construction method, plant association, the creativity, but one of the categories is endeavour and risk. So it's a kind of, how far have you taken it, and you know, have you gone that extra mile? This is the team, or part of the team. There's one guy missing out there. There's George, my son, on the end with his thumb up. All 6'3" of him, and size 13 and a half feet. If we run out of room in the skip, we use his wellies. And it's a good buddy of mine there, Simon, on the end. Simon and I met, crumbs, 25, 26 years ago. No, might even been a bit longer. I went to the Welsh College of Horticulture, and Simon had just started work there, doing some lecturing in construction. He's got his own business now up in Anglesey. He's worked with me off and on as a subcontractor over the years, and he's helped me out enormously. And he was just fabulous to have around. He was a great help, and without him, we certainly wouldn't have completed the walls. So no, he's a great guy. And Mikey, who's holding the People's Choice Award, he only started with me a couple of years ago, and was probably a skilled labourer. And now he's moved up the ranks, and he's certainly one of my key players in the future of actual landscapes as well. So it was great to have him on board. And I say sharing the show with my son was magical. It was brilliant, really, really rewarding.
Super, thank you.
So how do you and Emily get together then, Rory? Do she design it and come to you and say, will you build it, or how do you all kick it off?
Well, it's a very much kind of who you know basis, because with exhibiting previously, the RHS Clerk of Works, Darren, and the team behind the running of the show kind of get to know who is able to meet the criteria of installing. And Emily was recommended, I was recommended to Emily, and she contacted me. She designed the garden, came to me, we tweaked a few things, I called on a lot of favours, pulled in a lot of resources. Of course, she wasn't able to be in the country because of COVID, so I had to do a lot of running around. I managed to get probably about 20 grand's worth of sponsorship with all the contacts and people that I'd have experience with, and as a result, she came over literally 2 weeks before the build, and we hadn't seen each other for 18 months. I mean, we were due to do the show in 2020, but of course it got cancelled, so it kind of sat dormant for a little while. And then, as I say, we had to do a few last-minute adjustments. A few sponsors decided to make it a bit more exciting by dropping out at the last minute. But I pulled in a lot of favours, and it all came together on the day. So, in true table style, it was a wing and a prayer, but we pulled it off. So, yeah, that's how it sort of came about. It's a lot of word of mouth. Any more questions from anyone about the show?
Well, I have one question. It's for Peter, though. I just noticed on the video that you found guys drinking beer. They directed you to the beer tent, and then I heard an announcement that the show had closed. So did you actually manage to get a beer on what looked like a very sunny day?
No, it was closed.
That's disappointing to hear. So the plants were watered, but you weren't.
I had some nice cups of tea in the afternoon, actually.
Yeah, it was a little bit. I had to manage. I was crisis managing. Unfortunately, I had a project on the go at the same time as the show, and these clients had abandonment issues, and I had to race over on the hottest day of the show. My air conditioning decided to pack in on my van, on my truck rather. I had to go and pick up a trailer, grab a table saw, which then broke, and it turned into one of those epics. And Peter very kindly did the tea drinking for me whilst I was running around like an idiot trying to manage the crisis. And we met up quite late in the day, didn't we? And you did look burnished and bronze, Peter, in the glorious sunshine, I've got to say.
Yeah. Right, I think we're about there, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that being the case, then I'll do the vote of thanks. It's really interesting, Rory. It's a big insight into it's a major undertaking to do the whole thing, and to see what actually goes into it, has been mentioned. We turn up, we have a little pooch around, wander around. Oh, I like this, I like that, don't like that, or whatever. But to actually see what goes into it, and then also to hear about the pull down at the end of it, it's a massive undertaking and costs an absolute fortune, a lot more than what I realised. And you do really rely upon the public coming back to see you afterwards and progress it. But unfortunately, you're talking to a bit of a fruit and veg man rather than a flower man. I'm not into the flowers that much in my little plot. And so you come out with all these weird and wonderful Latin names and everything else. I ain't got a clue. They go in one ear, out the other ear, and you sort of think, well, yeah, that wasn't too bad, but can never ever remember what the heck they were called.
Don't worry about
But and you sort of think, well, yeah, I wouldn't mind some of that in my garden. But yeah, a really, truly magical event. And to be part of it, I would imagine, is something really special. And, you know, to keep going back year on year, you must be doing something right. So, yeah, really good, really interesting talk. So without further ado, if we can show our appreciation in the usual manner, then please.
Thank you.
Right, thanks very much, everyone. Then we look forward to seeing you next week on the Meet the Board session. Hope you've got your questions ready for us all.
How long have you got?
Will it get past the first person?
Depends who we put on first.
Hey, thanks, Rory. Thanks, Peter's fantastic. Thanks a million.
It's
well done.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Right, we'll see you all anon then.
Yeah.
Catch you later. Good to see you guys.